There's your copy right here. Good to have you back again. We have had to change the rules a little bit around, but first, since I had promised Representative Green, Representative Green to come up and present House Resolution 204. I'm State Representative John Yates, and I'm Chairman of the Defense and Veterans Affairs Committee, and we're going to take up that one resolution. Is Mr. Smith here? I don't see him, so we won't take up the other resolution. Go ahead, sir. Is there any question from anybody? Do we have a motion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you. It's carried unanimously. Thank you, sir.
Great presentation.
Yeah. I thought it was the personality that did it. Yeah, that'd be fine. We'll go ahead and take it up. It's House Resolution 102. Excuse me, no, that's the one we just took up. Hold on, let's find the other. It's 274, and is sponsored by Representative Smith, but this gentleman is going to present it. Is there any questions?
Oh, just considered. Okay. I misunderstood what you said. I'm sorry, Jim.
Do I have a motion? Second. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, passed unanimously. The gentleman already gone. I'll just come back here. Okay. All right, now we got to consider House Bill 188. But give a little background, because a lot of the meetings were between the governor's people and the people out there affected by all the work that the veterans are going to be doing if they get these jobs. And it's been a long journey. And I appreciate so much all of David's forbearance with us on this, because there was a few misunderstandings of what happened in various meetings where the governor's people and the industry people met and did a yeoman job of hashing all this out. And I hope that we have done a good enough job that we can pass this bill today. The governor is very much for it, and I think anybody that wants the best for veterans is for it, for doing what we can to help veterans. And at the same time, we don't want to do something to help veterans that does something to undermine the people who do the jobs for us every day in our neighborhoods. So with that, I'd I'll ask Representative Kuma to come up and present his bill. He's the governor's floor leader.
Then we'll address you today as to their position on the bill at this point. Let me just briefly tell you I believe it's the one major substantive change from the previous version that you had before you, and that is going to be, and I'm looking now at LC 212150S.
Is that one I have one? Is that what I have? That one? Thank you.
And the primary change is going to be found in lines 22 through about 25 or 26. And essentially what we've done by this change is we are establishing a committee which will be composed of the Secretary of State's Division Director, the Governor's Office of Workforce Development, members from that office, and also members of the relevant subpart of the board that governs licensure for the particular trade that's affected. And that committee will be the body that determines whether or not a particular military certification should be given any kind of waiver or exemption from the licensing procedure. So that's the primary change. You'll find that change in Section 1 at lines 22 through 24, 25. And also you'll find that similar change in the language. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Let me get my learned counsel to give me a hand here just a second. Okay, yes, and the second change, that change also applies to the language that authorizes the spouse of a military member to apply for certification, which you'll find first in the subsection B on page 2, lines 47 through about line 49. That change, that language change, or those two changes are found in two separate places in the bill. So you got 4 changes throughout the bill, but it's the same language being added in 4 different places to apply to all of the various licensures equally. Open for questions? And I do know there are others who will speak to the bill. Yes, sir. That's all we've changed.
Other questions? Thank you. You have anyone else you want to speak for it?
I think some of the folks from the trades did want to just make a comment about it.
Okay. So
nobody else from my office.
From yours. Okay. Yes. All right. We don't use sign-in sheets. We just take whoever holds up a hand first. Who wants to speak? Who wants to come up and address us? Yeah, I see a hand back. Come on up. Oh, you okay? Yeah, Mr. Lemke. Tell us who you are and who you represent,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Lee Lemke. Most of you know me as representing the mining industry for the last 25 years, but I also privileged to represent electrical and mechanical contractors throughout the state. There are 3 trade associations. We call ourselves the specialty contractors, and they have about 10,000 people that work for them. I want to thank the governor's office and particularly the committee chairman for all the work that we've gone to try to make this bill more palatable and workable. We believe from our position that we are in favor of this piece of legislation because it still leaves the authority with the applicant applying. It still leaves the authority with the licensing board, and we feel that's very important. It does help expedite some of the relevancy as far as their testing and certification is concerned, which the governing board will look at, make sure their MOS is compatible to what we now require to be an electrician in the state of Georgia. So again, any questions? We want to thank everybody for helping us.
Any questions, Mr. Lecter? Anybody else in your group? Are you?
No, sir, I don't have anything.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Mark, if you want to be next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Mark Woodall with Associated General Contractors. We're the statewide trade association that represents the commercial builders. A number of our associate members are some of the trades that were impacted by this bill. More than anything, I wanted to do two things, is recognize the chairman and this committee for your leadership, for allowing the industry to sit down with the impacted parties. Also recognize the governor's office, Secretary of State's office, and the sponsor of the legislation for allowing us to get what we think is now a pretty good piece of legislation, and we would not have had that opportunity without everyone being a willing party to come to the table. So we appreciate your leadership and the opportunity to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Take any questions.
So you, the bill's okay as you see it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Did anybody have a question? Yes, sir. There's I think some lady held up a hand back there. Yeah, oh, there she is. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Sharon Dunn. I represent the Plumbing and Mechanical Association of Georgia, and I would just also like to echo what Lee and Mark have said. I want to thank the chairman for all his hard work in getting this before the group, and also the Governor's Office of Workforce Development. You've both been extremely accessible, listened to our comments and our concerns, and we, PMA is supportive of this legislation because it still allows the applicant has to go before the licensing board, and we want to do everything we can to expedite returning veterans to get to work and get their license and get employed. So we appreciate all the efforts in this
Any
piece of
questions for
legislation.
anybody? Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir. Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to echo what has been said. I really appreciate you going out of the way to work with all of us.
Tell who you represent.
Bruce Widener, represent the Conditioned Air Association in Georgia. He says he's been here about 20 years. This is my 41st year. I knew John when he first came in down here, so appreciate y'all giving us an opportunity to speak on it. I feel like the Lone Ranger out here. My guys are pretty much have been against it from the beginning, and we've tried to come up with some kind of constructive criticism. When we finally got something in writing from one of our members who is a veteran, it's hard to stand up here and be against veterans. We're certainly not against veterans. And it's hard to be against the governor's office, and we all love the governor, but this is real important to our members, and when we surveyed them, they could not be more against several provisions in the bill, and one of them, who is a Marine veteran who was in the heating and air conditioning industry, his MOS in the Marines was heating and air, came up with this that we had not seen before. But these are the reference materials that you have to have for the heating and air conditioning license, the Class 1 license. And it's the International Fuel Code, the International Mechanical Code, the National Electrical Code, Manual D, Duct Design, Manual J, Heat Loss and Heat Gain, Contractor's Guide to Business Law and Project Management from the Georgia Construction Industry Licensing Board, Code of Federal Regulation, Title 29, Carrier System Design Manuals, Duct Design. The only one that was in common with the military level was the refrigeration and air conditioning technology. That's the only one that the military had in there. So we just want to continue, although our members are still against the bill as it's written. We haven't seen the latest draft, of course, but we just want to continue to work through the process.
Get a copy?
We got a copy now, but we hadn't had a chance to really look at it. But we've got a long way to go through the session, and we hope to work with the sponsor again and other members of the committee as we go through the system. So, can I answer any questions?
Yeah, I guess I want to point out, I think we've done it before, but a veteran can go to work out there if he can satisfy the person that he knows what he's doing right now, right?
Right today, yes, sir. He does not have to have a license. This license gives him a license to go into business.
Yeah, the master mechanic or master plumber or whatever, they work under his license, right?
I can't speak for them.
No, I'm just saying that's a general thing. Well, in your case, if your air conditioner man has a license, then
right,
the employees under him work under that license.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make that clear that it's not hard for a veteran to work into the job there with that. Any questions?
And let me apologize too. Some of our members have gotten a little crazy about their conversations with members and the sponsor on this thing, and I apologize for that. We certainly did not encourage any of that. So.
I didn't run into anybody crazy.
You don't know some of my members.
Oh,
Thank you, sir.
They didn't come by. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Suzanne Williams, representing the Home Builders Association of Georgia. Again, I echo thank you for everybody that's worked on this over the past week or so. If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, our Executive Vice President, Kelly Lass, is here to voice some of our concerns that have come up since we got the last version. I just got the last version, but if you would mind to let her have a few comments, I would appreciate it.
I apologize for the way this thing came out. I guess I never dreamed that we would have this many meetings, but as I say, I wanted to be sure everybody was heard.
And that is so greatly
appreciated. And the more we talked, the more somebody noticed something, and I think everybody's been very good. The governor's office and certainly our council, David, has been very gracious, and it's amazing that we've gone this far, and nobody's got, as far as I know, nobody's got hates each other yet. But it's
I will never do that.
It's a very important thing to both sides, and I understand that.
Well, I appreciate that, and again, thank you so much. But if you wouldn't mind to let,
yeah, I'll be glad to.
Great, thank you.
All right.
And thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to just say a couple of words. But my name is Kelly Lass. I'm the Executive Vice President with the Home Builders Association of Georgia. And I'm glad Suzanne introduced me so you guys wouldn't think that I just swooped in, since you don't know me, and came in here with all kinds of issues or problems or anything like that. We actually were neutral on this bill until about 1 o'clock this afternoon. And we did have a committee meeting, and they have sent me as the messenger, if you will, to say that they do have a couple of issues. One would be the reciprocity from state to state, allowing them to come in, because we do not have any reciprocity with the residential side of the licensure here in Georgia, as well as they do truly believe that they should sit for the exam. So we do appreciate, I know that y'all have done a ton of work. Like I said, I do apologize. I didn't want to just swoop in here unannounced to deliver the message. But I have been sent here just to say that those are the only two things. I would hope, and I know that you have a long way to go, as other people have said, that we can work with the chairman and see if there's some things, or work with the sponsor to see if there are some things that maybe we could put in here to make everybody feel a little bit more comfortable.
Did you attend the meetings and have the opportunity to talk to the governor's people and so forth?
No, sir, I did not. Suzanne Williams is our lobbyist, and she was able to do that, and she has been in constant communication with me and the committee.
Did she have an opportunity then to talk?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you still have a little problem with that after?
Yeah, I think that we actually, our committee, and I'm here to voice for the Home Builders Association of Georgia, but I think that once they looked at the latest, is what we had earlier today around lunchtime, when they started looking at that, they still had some issues they would really like for folks to sit for the test. And then they have issues with from state to state. Since we don't allow we actually don't allow our licensed builders to go from state to state. If there's a licensed builder in South Carolina, they cannot come to Georgia without having a license here in Georgia and build homes.
had to take the test to get the license.
Yes, sir. They do. So it's a little bit different for every trade, and it's a little bit different even from.
Representative Coomer, do you have any address to that? Anybody have a comment on that?
I actually don't. I understand exactly what he is saying. However, we don't. It's not within the residential portion of the law now to get licensure here in Georgia. We obviously, like I said, if somebody's got a license in South Carolina or Tennessee, then we don't honor that here in Georgia. I do know that the current requirements are, if let's say that I've been working under an apprenticeship with a builder for 10 years and I want to go get my license, I want to become a builder, I do have to go before the board or go to one of the staff people within the board of the Secretary of State, and I have to be approved to do I even have the qualifications to even sit for the exam? And that's if I'm here already and not been out of state or out of the country or whatnot. Here again, we're still very sensitive to the fact that we appreciate our veterans and what they do for our country. So it's kind of a fragile situation, even when we talked about it today.
I have some questions. Representative Rizal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe Representative Coomer, that's lines 47 through 53. Is that correct? Now that's under the current bill. 2150S. Okay. So, ma'am, how does the way things are, how does that jive with the language that's in this bill? So if my wife is in the military and she gets stationed at Fort Benning, and I am a licensed contractor from South Carolina, what steps would I currently have to take, and how does that differ from this language?
So you live in South Carolina, but you've been stationed at Fort Benning, and your spouse is a licensed contractor in South Carolina. Is
I'm
that
a
what you've
licensed
asked?
contractor.
You are.
My spouse is in the military.
Currently, you would have to take the Georgia test.
Okay. All right, and so the difference is, rather than take a test, I would have to go to a licensing board. Is that?
I don't know exactly what those procedures will be. I mean, maybe you can speak on that as far as what they're proposing, what exactly that means, as far as their credential and their experience and all of that. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, do they physically show up in person? I don't know.
based on the state that you come from, correct? Or exceed. Will they handle this on an individual basis, or will they just make, if it's South Carolina, yes, you're coming from South Carolina, you meet or exceed the standard? Is that how? Understood. Sure. Okay, thank you.
Representative Rogers. You don't want a question? Okay.
My question is for the representative, not for her, so I don't want her to have to be there longer than she has to.
That's okay. I'm glad to stand here, but however you want to do it.
Is any other questions of the lady?
Thank you.
Can you live with this bill?
The way that it is right now, I do believe that I would have some disgruntled members. And I think that then they would have to look at how they're doing.
Is their point completely on requiring taking a test?
Yes, sir. I think let me clarify that. I think that what they're trying to identify is coming out of military service, depending on what area you're in the military, how does that qualify you to, build a home, fly an airplane? I think there's still certain requirements and testing that you would have to go through, and that was the comments that I heard.
Is that more important than, say, a very experienced person in that trade, just sitting down and talking to the guy and letting him demonstrate a little bit what he can do, or something, just a regular thing that people that I've noticed in my line of work all my life, that people would pretty quick determine whether the guy knew what he's doing. With just making his own test, I guess, what I would say. I mean, what happened before we got government?
Well, what happened before we had licensure is what you're trying to say. But currently, you are not. I mean, you cannot build a home here in Georgia without a current license.
But as I say, we have people who work under a master plumber, master whatever.
So you're talking about like an apprenticeship type.
Yeah.
You still, if you had your own business, you would still have to have a license.
Yeah, you have a master license that covers maybe 40 people, right? I mean, you can.
Not necessarily.
But you can't you? Some business.
No. I'm trying to think of the right word.
What's your comment on that, Mr. Representative? All right. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Thank you, lady.
And thank you.
Anybody else want to address the committee? Somebody else? No one else wants to address it? Representative Coomer, you want to kind of wrap up what you've heard and address any situation that has been brought up that you feel needs addressing, or any other thing that you want to do?
I would just reiterate that we are not opening the door for everybody that's ever qualified to fly an F-16 or shoot an M16 is going to be waived in and certified as a skilled tradesman in Georgia. That's not what the bill does. It simply says to this committee, not to this committee, but to the committee we're creating in the bill, take a look, see if it's appropriate that there be some waiver of the requirements, and if so, then authorize that waiver, and then the board can issue the certification if the person has already met those requirements from another state or through their military training, experience, and testing. So it is not as big a bill, frankly, as some people had thought in the beginning of the process. So I think we're now at a point most people realize that, and we can let this bill go forward, I hope. And I ask that you would give favorable consideration to the bill today.
In view of the way it started and the number of changes you have agreed to help relieve some of these situations, you feel like that you got with all of our meetings and everything that we got the best bill that we could come up with under the circumstances?
Yes, sir, I think so.
Any questions of the rest of the group?
Yes, sir.
Mr. DeVos.
Chairman, thank you. The question I have is, there been any consideration as to, first of all, we're having a significant number of veterans returning from mainly Afghanistan, but there's a lot of other that never made it to Afghanistan that are still going to be discharged. Has there been any effort or any kind of input as to how many are going to apply, or how many do you anticipate maybe supplying or applying? This board, if there's hundreds, that's a significant amount, at least initially, until you get through the original process. Is that something that has been thought through or anything?
Well, we don't have definitive or definite numbers on how many people will actually apply for each of these specific trades. We only know roughly the estimate numbers of how many people are going to be coming into Georgia who are veterans, leaving active service, and that's about 80,000 we expect in the next 4 years. And we also have significant, in the thousands of vacancies in skilled trades that we're trying to fill. So that's the impetus for the bill. If the question is there a possibility of overwhelming this committee or the board or the Secretary of State's office, it's hard to say that will happen or won't happen. I think the way this is set up, and let me explain this. The Secretary of State's office is involved in this bill because they have essentially the functional oversight of these boards. We've added members of the boards, the functional experts from those boards, to be involved in this process because they are, in fact, the people on the ground who know how to do the job here in Georgia. But, and this may not be completely self-evident, the reason we have the Governor's Office of Workforce Development as a component is because they operate primarily on federal grant money, and they have the staff who are paid specifically to do this kind of workforce research. So they're going to have the bodies and the resources to throw into the research process so that it won't overburden the Secretary of State's office. They don't have money to add people to do this job, so we're not asking them to do the job. But Office of Workforce Development does have the money and the people, and it's not taking anything out of our budget to have them do that, because those are positions that are primarily funded by federal grant money. And we don't want to overburden the board members who are coming essentially as volunteers to participate in this process. So that's why we have who we have involved. And does that help answer your question?
Other than, you know, a lot of the response earlier was, well, the test is only given 2 or 3 times a month.
Year.
Or a year. I'm sorry.
Sure.
And will this process take 3 months, 4 months?
Well, it's conceivable that the initial process of doing the research may take several months to find out if there are military specialties that should have these exemptions. And that's probably going to be an ongoing process because, as we all know, or most of us probably recognize, the DOD changes how it defines its own regulations and MOSs and codes. And so that'll be an ongoing process. To have it set up, we estimate is going to be about 7 months to get that part done. But once it's in place, it's there, subject to periodic revision. The spousal part, where that inquiry is only initiated by an application from a person from another state moving to Georgia, that part may take some amount of time for the initial applicant from a particular state. But again, once we have a state essentially on the list to say, okay, they meet or exceed our requirements, then the next applicant who comes in behind, applicant number 2, will not take nearly as long to get through the process as applicant 1.
Thank you.
What? Give me that again. Representative Kummer, you know, originally we was going to have the man up from Macon to talk about that, and somebody talked about test at will. What is the situation now?
Well, the man,
in answer to the gentleman's question,
the man from Macon was a lady who spoke to us at the last committee.
I talked to the man, and the lady was his spouse, I understand.
And she did tell us. You know, let me say it this way: I don't remember what she talked about at committee, but I know she was here, and I at the time I was here before had a spreadsheet with me that I've been provided by Office of Workforce Development. I don't have it in front of me today, but it showed all of these various boards and how frequently they tested. And on the list I had, yes, this is the list. And I'll tell you what it says: electrical contractor, conditioned air, plumbing. Each of those are, well, electrical contractor testing. And what I was getting at is, I went over this list with her to make sure that this information was accurate when she was here. So she's not here to testify, but she said this is accurate information. Electrical contracting, the test is offered 3 or 4 times a year. It's an open book test that takes 8 hours, 140 questions.
Does that mean that?
I asked her what book are they allowed to open, and she said any book they want. Any book.
Electrical code.
So, and then conditioned air, she said that one is given 3 times a year, 120 questions, open book, 7 hours. Plumbing, given 3 times a year, 120 questions, 5 hours. Now, as to residential light commercial contractor and utility foreman, she could not tell me how frequently they were given. And so it may be that theirs are offered on an as-requested basis. I don't have any information to dispute that. But I can say that she did say air conditioning, or the HVAC, 3 times a year, not as demanded or requested. Does that answer the question?
Well, I guess that I was thinking that when they say at will, I thought that was pretty more often, because that sounds like it's the veteran's decision. Did this colonel, he when he testified, what he have anything on that? Or he talked about other things?
Well, now, I'm not referring to the colonel's testimony. I'm referring to the division director.
I just asked that as another question.
I do not. I was not present when I don't remember the colonel testifying.
Okay. Is there any questions?
I'd like to. Being a freshman, I'm not sure exactly how the procedure is, but we don't know how long that board would take to meet. And possibly when the veteran came back, it would be meeting in 2 weeks or a month. Could we have a friendly amendment here that says that all this can take place for taking the test?
Well,
you mean before the Secretary of State's office?
No, just if the test is regularly available.
Well, let me respond. I think that's what the situation is. Either a person can apply for this immediate certification, or they can take the test.
But the test requires certain.
This is an exception to the test, or not necessarily testing. This is an exception to the experience, training, and testing requirements if they have met or exceeded those requirements already.
But it would take possibly a month or two to find that out and then they would miss that next test.
I see what you're saying. I think that's only going to be an issue, again, either in the first few months until this process is completed for the military codes, or possibly for the first applicant in the line. Give me one second, please. And my understanding is it takes 90 days to get the results back from those tests. So even the testing period, beyond waiting for the test, you're going to wait another 90 days to get the results back. So you may be looking at 6 months for that process.
My ignorance of the policies, the procedures, is evident.
Well, I think we're delving into area that, to get a job and come home and get a job, whatever, if he applies immediately when he gets here, I remember when I came home, there's a lot of things I wanted to do besides immediately go to work. And so I don't know, is it unreasonable to say that a person to get a job, actually, this is just a license. I mean, all of them can go to work if somebody hires them as a journeyman or whatever, right?
Well, I mean, you can.
I mean, if they're under a master plumber or master mechanic or whatever, they can go to work if they satisfy the employer.
Well, I mean, I could go to work as a laborer. I probably wouldn't be a very good one, but I could go to work as a laborer.
Go to work I'd
much rather be your lawyer than your laborer, but
as a tradesman.
I don't think you'd be a tradesman unless you are certified as a tradesman. I think that's what we're trying to get at, is should there be an avenue for getting to be a certified tradesman for people who meet these set of criteria, other than just the testing itself, or other than the currently existing avenue for getting them.
Out of all the give and take we've had and everything, do you see any other area that you're familiar with that you and the other governor's representatives see that you think should be done or can be done? I mean, this thing has been massaged more than any bill I've ever seen in my life.
We have an agreement that is that is a result of the efforts of many varied and interested groups of people. Not everyone is satisfied completely. I don't think I'm satisfied completely, but I am satisfied that we have a bill that will have a positive effect for veterans and for the workforce. And so to that extent, I think this is the bill that we should respectfully consider when the chairman's ready, a motion and ask for this bill to be passed.
knowing all the meetings we've had about this with the governor and trying to help veterans get a job and also not go overboard with hurting the contractors and journeymen and so forth, do you feel that the governor would be happy with this bill?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Does anybody else have a question? I was just going to ask one question. I don't want to put him in the spot. Does Mr. Woodall have anything to say? Let's see. In this session, you speak in this session? No. Oh, okay. All right. Well, I just say that because I honor this man as knowing what he's doing. I've worked with him over the years, and he's always been a straight shooter and trying to do the right thing. And
I'll add to that, Mr. Chairman. When this bill first came to light, he was the first one in my office coming to talk to me about concerns and issues, and we frankly worked them out pretty much on day one. So I appreciate his efforts as well.
I'm familiar with how much he's worked within this framework of what we've tried to do. It's one that I feel comfortable with. And here again, I've never been in a bill up here where everybody was perfectly satisfied. They say if everybody's perfectly satisfied, you didn't do something right, but and that might be true. Maybe you're not doing it. You're not working for the people if you feel all the politicians are satisfied. But is there anything else you have to say about it? I think you've already said that you'd like to have somebody make a motion on it.
That's exactly right,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Does anybody else have anything to say? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. You got the name, Dave. That House Bill 188, and I should have called out, I guess, the LC number since we've had so many versions here. LC 212150S. Is everybody in agreement on that?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
That's the latest version that David worked out today. All in favor of that will raise your hand. I believe it's unanimous, isn't it? So I don't ask if anybody's against it. It's passed, and since you got the two copies, that you're going to present the two copies. Okay. I really appreciate everybody participating like they did, and as I say, it's amazing that this much conversation went on, and nobody seemed to be in a fighting mood. Maybe it's because they're like me, I'm too fat to run and too old to fight. So, but I really appreciate everybody participation in the committee of coming in at the last minute here, and we had to change the rules several times, and it's been a real challenge, I think, and I do appreciate everybody. And I certainly appreciate the sponsor of the bill. He's done well for the governor here today, I think, and we'll see if it comes out on the floor and see how many friends we got in the Senate. Thank you very much. We adjourn.
Thank you, Chairman.